Tell us about Molly.
Molly. She's wonderful. She's very playful, very loving. I take her, even though my mother is on the other side, I still take her to the nursing home because one of the people in the book, I promised her, I said, you know what, Nancy, I will bring Molly to see you here. She just loves her. And she says, you know what, she makes me feel like I'm worth something. And when I heard that, I'm trying to get out of her, hide behind her as the tears are coming down my eyes. She says she makes me feel like I'm loved, like I mean something. I was like, oh my gosh, wow. So, but she's just a loving, wonderful companion.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Ask Julie Ryan Show. It's where we blend spirituality and practicality to help you live a life of purpose and joy. We have Dr. Daphne Mobley with us on the show today. Daphne went from the Bronx to the boardroom. Her journey as a veterinarian and Fortune 500 executive led her to write The Pet Effect, Healing and Learning Life Lessons from the Pets We Love. I'm eager to explore how that connection can sustain us through life's highs and lows, and to hear about what Daphne has discovered are the most profound lessons pets teach their humans. Please remember to subscribe, leave a comment, and share this episode with your family and friends. Now, let's go chat with Dr. Daphne. Daphne, what a treat to have you with us today. Thanks for taking the time to join us.
It's an honor to be with you. It really, really is.
Oh, my honor. Are you kidding? It's fabulous. You say you have a deep calling to help the lives of people and pets. You also say your experience as a veterinarian and dog mom, I love that, has shown you the path. Tell us about your journey.
Oh, boy. Well, when I started out, when I was growing up, I was terrified of animals because my mom was terrified of them. So learned the behavior, and eventually I got used to them thanks to one of my aunts. And once she said, you can't come here anymore, you have to get used to my dogs. I was like, I love going to her house. It was fun. Family always went there, and I got over my fear. And I knew by the time I was 13 that I definitely wanted to be a veterinarian. That's all I could think of in my mind. And so I focused all of my efforts on that. I had an interview for a private school in New York City, and the interviewer said, you want to be a veterinarian? Cornell has a really great veterinary school. So I said, somehow, some way, I have to get there, and plan to go to Cornell undergrad. And didn't get into Cornell Veterinary School, but got in at the University of Florida, and that started my veterinary journey.
And they're one of the top 5 schools too, aren't they? Florida's right up there.
Florida, I just actually read the other day on one of their veterinary magazines. They're number 7.
Okay.
Now.
Well, my alma mater, the Ohio State University, is in the top 5.
Oh,
so just have to mention it. Yeah. My daughter-in-law, Dr. Mal, who you and I have talked about, Dr. Mal, she was accepted at Ohio State and then went to Auburn because Ohio State was so much more expensive because it was out of state.
Ooh.
But when her buddies in vet school at Auburn said, you were accepted at Ohio State, Mal said, yeah. I said, whoa, that was a big deal. I know Cornell's up there too, and I know Florida's up there.
Yeah.
I know they're one of the top ones. Yeah. And the funny thing about you guys, about you and Dr. Mal and all vets, and I saw this with Mallory, when she was in school, people said to her, oh, you couldn't get into medical school, huh? So you went to vet school? And what would you say to that? And then I'll tell you what she said.
Actually, it's funny. I would tell them how I really feel. That the Bronx side of me would kind of talk to them a little bit. But I remember when I was growing up, people would say, it's easier to get into medical school. Why don't you go to medical school? And it was like a Charlie Brown, I kind of ignored it and knew that I wanted to go to vet school.
Well, Mallory's response was, well, there are hundreds of medical schools. There are only 19 vet schools.
Right.
And in medical school, you learn about one species. We have to learn about many species. And you know what? That just shut them up.
Oh, that's a great response. Great response. Eh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. So you get into Florida, you're a vet there, then what happens?
Well, I went to school in Gainesville, Florida, but I knew that I wanted to come back here, close to New York City. My parents are here, friends from college. And I just knew I wanted to come back here. And so I ended up going actually into the corporate side, which is no longer what I wanted to do because I think I'm more heart centered now. Not that veterinarians who work in corporations are not heart centered, but that opportunity I see in hindsight allowed me to be exposed to other things and have other opportunities.
Did you practice as a vet when you first came out of school, or did you go right into the corporate world?
I practiced as a vet coming out of school, but it was a specific specialty for working for pharmaceutical companies.
Oh,
Yes.
interesting.
Mhm.
Okay,
And then
so
I
were you
did work part-time while I was doing my residency in that. Um, I worked part-time at an emergency clinic. And so then I stopped because I got stopped by a police officer. He said, "Ma'am, you were, swerving a little bit." Just I was taking on too much. I was exhausted. So
oh gosh. So were you involved in research then when you were doing your residency?
I did support the research efforts there. Mhm.
Great,
Mhm.
great.
Mhm.
Okay, so when you combine your experience as a vet and on the corporate side of the equation, and you have a calling to help the lives of others, both pets and humans,
Mhm.
how do you combine the 2? How do they work together?
Well, I've evolved to be more heart-centered. Um I think when I was doing that, I wasn't as heart-centered, so, I could kind of block out certain things. But I look and see that the opportunities I had after that during that time after that, I kinda got bored. I love a lot of mental stimulation, and I had the opportunity to then work for the then CEO and chairman of the company. It was a Fortune 500 company, and spend a year and a half traveling with him, seeing how he interacted with his staff, confidential meetings. It was just an amazing opportunity to have that experience working for him. And eventually I went into a role as the head of diversity for the company. And when he left, I decided, and some other senior leaders left, I decided, you know what? I don't, there's nothing here for me anymore. There's nothing that I could see that I wanted to pursue in terms of my career. So I didn't tell anybody I was leaving because I didn't want anybody to talk me out of it. But I decided to just leave and figure out what I was going to do from there.
And you were at the top echelon because you were VP level, you were an
Yes.
executive level, so you were in on the board meetings and all
Yes.
that jazz.
Hmm.
What was that trajectory coming from doing a residency in research to being in the C-suite? Or okay, so right at, interacting directly with the C-suite.
Yes.
The
Yes. It was like a dream because I never would have imagined having that opportunity in 10,000 lifetimes. But it was amazing because the CEO then, Robert Essner, which was Wyeth at the time, was just so down to earth. I just had lunch with him 2 weeks ago. He's just an amazing person, so intelligent. And he exposed me to so many things. And he was honest. That was a time when the company had to deal with the FinFin litigation and just a lot of things that were going on and challenges and how the senior leaders dealt with it at that time. So it was an amazing journey because I was asking for more to do. I didn't know what it was, and they wanted me to stay with the company. And so the president of the division I was in recommended me for this opportunity that he has, single people at a time working with him for him for 1 to 2 years. But it really is just learning about how the whole company works. So it was amazing.
I'm hearing in my head, ask her about communicating with animals and how that helped you communicate with executives at Fortune 500 companies.
Wow. I think at
I
that
get
time,
these divine downloads into my
yeah,
head, and,
yeah.
is there anything that comes to mind along those, I mean, I know you can communicate with pets. I think every vet communicates with the pets telepathically, whether they know it or not. And I'm wondering how that transitioned over into the corporate world because you were doing like regular medical stuff, not just vet med, correct?
No, I mean, well, medical stuff from the standpoint that I was exposed to the human medicines that were being created and understanding how they interacted in a human body.
Right.
So I did have that opportunity, but that's a great question. I don't think at that time that I realized that was happening. I don't know. I was just being very pure with the heads of all the divisions and asking them questions. Anything that I wanted to know, they would allow me to ask, or I met with them to understand because it was all foreign to me. I knew my little world, but I
Yeah.
didn't really understand how the other divisions were, like the consumer division with you know, Robitussin, chapstick, and all those, as well as the other human drugs that were used for treatment of cancers and, cardiovascular diseases. But I would just ask them, and I would also sit in on each of the divisional heads, sit in on their meetings with their management team so that I could learn and understand.
What I'm hearing from spirit, Daphne, is that you lead by your intuition and your gut feeling.
Uh-huh.
And as a vet, you trained how to do that, whether you took a class on it, which I doubt, but since the dog or the cat or the lizard or whatever you're treating can't say, "Oh, Dr. Daphne, my tummy hurts."
Yeah.
You had to really develop your intuitive skills, and that's why you were so successful in the corporate world because you were coming from a gut place, you were using your intuitive skills. Because there's so many shenanigans that go on in the
Yes.
corporate world, as
Yes.
you
Mhm.
know, but people knew that they could trust you and you were a straight shooter, and you were coming from a place of honesty and intuition in a world that's very competitive and sometimes not on the up and up,
Right.
not just in pharmaceuticals, but
Mhm.
certainly in every corporation, every company, even small companies. I hear about the nonsense that goes on with the
Yes.
staff.
Mhm.
And I think that maybe you weren't aware of it, but a lot of that came from your vet training.
Mhm. Mhm. I sure wasn't. You know, I came purely as me, I didn't want to try to be someone I was not, so that they could feel comfortable interacting with me to help me learn whatever I wanted to learn, you know?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So how have you taken the experience and then when you left big corporate, then you went back into practicing
A little
vet
bit,
med?
yes, I did. Yes, I did practice with just dogs and cats for a period of time because I said, "Okay, Daphne, you need some money coming in here." Until I was trying to figure it out, and that was, like, probably one of the most difficult times in my life, trying to figure out what I was going to do next. But in hindsight, I see everything has a purpose, of course,
Right.
and in the midst of it, you can't because you want what you want and you want it quick, or I wanted what I wanted and to figure it out quickly. So I did go into practice, but then I was also going out doing motivational speaking. I loved people used to come to me at Wyeth and say, "How did you come from this division and have the opportunity to move up in corporate?" And so I would talk to them all the time about, things to think about if they wanted to move up on in their career path. And so then some of the relationships I had as the VP of corporate diversity, I asked them about speaking. They were like women's group, Working Mothers Media, that had different events, different conferences that allowed me to speak. Other heads of diversity at other companies, or like Fannie Mae, had me come in and speak to their different groups. So I love that. I love the feel good of making people feel good. That's what I
Yeah.
love.
Yeah. Yeah. Back to the heart-centered thing, and I wanna do a deep dive on that in a minute, but first, You say pets are not beings we leave in backyards. Rather, they have a true impact on our lives. What do you mean by that?
Well, I remember when I was growing up, pets were relegated either to the basement or the backyards. And I marvel at this evolution where there's such an integral part of people's lives now. You see heads hanging out of cars as they're going by. You see family vacations with, Molly, accompanying them. So I think that people are really feeling better with pets around them. They see the value of how they make them feel. You can come home in a funk after a bad day and your dog is wagging, you know, his or her tail when you come in the door, and it changes your energy instantly. It's just so amazing. And that's what I love to see that impact.
Well, and I work with people who've lost a pet too. We had dinner last night with friends and they'd put their cat down yesterday afternoon. And so I took them, I took my friend an orchid just as a, here, hope this makes you feel better kind of thing. And I could tell she'd been crying. Her eyes were all puffy and stuff. And I talked to so many people who tell me on the sly, they don't want to admit this, that they really sometimes the grieving of a loss of a pet is harder than the loss of a person.
I tell pet parents that's the worst part of being a pet parent is when that time comes. I mean, it's just the most horrific thing. And I think about that with my last dog, and I didn't even see it. People were like, "Wow, Pappy doesn't quite look as energetic," and I'm like, "Oh, it's the heat because he not doesn't do well in the heat." And I took him to a colleague, someone who actually taught continuing education classes, the Animal Medical Center in New York City. I said, "Something's amiss. I heard a heart murmur. Something's wrong." And when he did the ultrasound, there was this huge uh, mass or growing around the heart. And he said probably a piece of it, came off because one time he just tipped over, and I'm like, "What the heck is going on here?" And that was my indication. Okay, let's go. Let me get him down there. And he said a piece of it. It looks very nasty. And he said part of it probably broke off and occluded one of the arteries. And so that night, he was quiet in the back of the car, and my brother was there, and he's always up underneath my brother. And I said, and I had gone out and come back, and I said, "Well, where's Pappy?" He said, "I don't know. I haven't seen him." I was shocked. Went upstairs. He's just looking kind of strange, and just staring at me. And I'm like, "All right, let me take him for a walk." Took him for a walk. He keeled over, let out a what? And that was it. I scooped him up, ran back inside. I'm bawling my eyes out. My brother heard me scream outside, and he knew something was amiss. And I just, I just didn't expect it. And he was only 5.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
I,
Well,
I, I get it.
what he's telling me in my head is it was perfect. He got to do what he loved, which was to walk. And
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
saying that you and he used to love to walk
Oh,
together.
yes, we did. Yes, we
Yeah,
did.
so he said,
Uh-huh.
"What a way to go." It was
Yeah.
perfect. Yeah,
Yes.
which sounds crazy. But how do you feel about euthanizing pets? Because that's something that I work with my clients a lot about afterwards, and they feel so guilty.
They do. They do. Um, and I try to get them to release that guilt by saying, you're focusing on whether it was the right time, but intuitively when the right time is. No one can tell you when to do it. I said there are some guidelines, right? They're not eating, they're not drinking water, they lose control of their bowels. So I said, but you know, and if for some reason you're blocking that out, others who see it will kind of let you know in a way that you can understand. Sweetie, you're hanging on too long. Now it's about you and you want your pet around versus doing what is best for them.
Yeah. Well, like your dog, when you took him to your colleague, I think oftentimes when it's somebody that we love so much, we do our clarity does get clouded
Yes. Yes, it
in our
does.
thinking.
Yes, it
Yeah.
does. It's,
Yeah.
because we want them here and we want them, we love their presence and all that they do for us. And the silence when they're gone, I think is the worst part, the hardest thing that people have to deal with because there's no pitter patter. There's no one following you from room to room and, or sleeping curled up beside you in the bed. So, it's like I told my neighbor, if you want a few licks, Molly will be more than happy to visit you now that she had to euthanize her dog because of the cancer. So yeah.
Well, and you bring up a really good point, and the pet spirits tell me pretty much all of the time. I would say it's very, very common that they'll want their owners to go or their pet parents or their humans, whatever you wanna call them. They want their humans to go get another dog or cat or pet, and my client's going, "Oh my god, I'm not ready, I can't do that." And their pet spirit's saying, "No, go do it right now. It's gonna help you with the grieving. We're still gonna have our relationship even though I'm in spirit, but it's gonna bring joy back into your
Right.
life,
Hmm.
and it's gonna help you with the grieving process."
Yes.
Have you
I
found
agree.
that to be the case?
Well, I've even found it personally because I thought 2 weeks later I got Molly right after he died. I said, "Wow, this is quick," but I couldn't stop looking at her videos and her photo. I think I was like fourth down in terms of who, contacted them about her, and they were asking my references. Is she really a veterinarian? And so then that drove me to the front of the of the line for her. But yeah, 2 weeks later, I got her, so that
Yeah.
helped tremendously.
Tell us about Molly.
Molly. Molly, I had to leave with the dog sitter today because no barking or any frolicking while I'm on this call. She's wonderful. She's very, very playful, very loving. I take her, even though my mother is on the other side, I still take her to the nursing home because one of the people in the book, I promised her, I said, you know what, Nancy, I will bring Molly to see you here. She just loves her. And she says, you know what? She makes me feel like I'm worth something. And when
Oh,
I heard that, I'm trying to get out of her, hide behind it as the tears are coming down my eyes. She says, she makes me feel like I'm loved, like I mean something. I was like, oh my gosh, wow. So, but she's just a loving, wonderful companion.
what kinda dog is she? What breed?
She's half pug and half I don't know what the baby daddy is. I don't know.
Baby daddy, listen to you. But how what why do you think you were led to her?
I just feel that she's here to continue to teach me the lessons that Pappy started teaching me.
And Pappy was he a pug as well?
He was a bug. He was a Boston Terrier pug mix.
A
Mhm.
bug. Haven't
Yeah.
heard that
Yeah,
before.
yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Alright. And I know you've said that Molly helped you with your mom's slow decline and then after she passed. Tell us that story, please.
So, my mother was one of my best friends. I would talk to her every day, and the transition as her dementia advanced, she was unable to walk. Um, then she stopped talking. Um, it was just, she became someone who was just sitting there with a blank stare.
Mm.
And so I wanted her as she used to be, as she was before. I wanted her to be that way. And I remember the people in the nursing home, the attendants, the ones who cared for her daily, said, "Oh my God, your mom is so beautiful." And they said, "No, we don't mean externally. She's that, but internally." And I'm thinking to myself, how do they see it? How do they see And I said, "What am I missing?" I said, "I'm so stuck on wanting her to be as she was that I'm missing out that she's still the same loving being within." And I remember just praying, just think, let me be able to see her in a different way. And so I was able to see her differently. And that helped with my sadness, my, my reflection on what I've remembered and to deal with her in the present way that she was.
And did Molly help you do that?
I think Molly helped me do Molly would Molly would she did help me do that. I believe she did. Um, because one thing Molly would do was jump on my mother's bed and just lick her until my mother started laughing. Now, what you're not aware of yet until I tell you is that my mother was terrified. Oh, that's right. I did say that before. She was terrified of animals. So there was no way a dog could come within 2 miles of her. But the dementia, she would just jump on him like, wow, she's so happy. And it's something that's so simple and what she's doing to bring that happiness and that unconditional love to her. So why am I reflecting on this? Why can't I be the same way and put aside what I want and still fully extend and show my love for her in her current state? So there's so many things. I mean, uh, Molly showed me, unconditional love. She illuminated as Pappy did, illuminated my impatience. She continued to open my heart up to love with a partner. As Pappy started the process. And yeah, they if we look and see, if we look and want to know, they show us the lessons that they're teaching us. And every single person in my book, without hesitation, I think they were struck by the question, what is this dog, this bird, this horse, this cat teaching me? I think they initially were like, what? But they could all answer it. Every single person could answer it within a minute, within less than a minute. So
That's interesting, isn't it?
it is.
So do you think there's a spiritual relationship between all humans and their pets or their animals?
They're helping 100%. I believe they're helping with our spiritual evolution. 100%. Yes. Taking us up, you know, because of their presence and the way they love us, they're helping to lift our vibrational level if we allow them to, right? And it's not even it's automatic, I feel. It's just so automatic or it becomes more automatic if people allow themselves the opportunity. And I remember I took Molly, a friend of mine, one of the people in the book, uh, Susan Solar she said, could you bring Molly? So she's a guidance counselor in one of the high schools nearby. And they have this pet therapy. And so they'll say, can you bring Molly to the school on this day? I said, sure. And I remember I met two students who were never really exposed to dogs. And the girl started screaming, but she kept coming closer to Molly. And I'm like, well, sweetie, what's the matter? And she said, I kind of want to touch your dog, but I'm afraid. Don't be afraid. I promise you, she will love it and she will sit there. I said, come with me, sweetie. I had Molly sit. I said, well, just come, put your hand on mine. And I let her hand there. And then Molly was just looking at her. I said, see, she's trying to get to you. And she was back up. I said, don't worry. She's not going to do anything to you. Just keep trying to get used to her. And this will open the door for you to be used to dogs. And she did that. And she wanted to stand and the bell rang and she didn't want to go to her class. And there were like the two young ladies like that. And I said, wow. And she said, are you going to come back? I said, if I'm invited, not me. She didn't care about me. She cared about Molly. So I said, I will bring her back if Miss Solar invites me again. So that was just wonderful seeing their transitions to allow themselves to have that experience, to push through the fear, and then be gratified at the end of that.
How wonderful.
Mhm.
So Molly's really a service dog, even
She
though
she is, although she's
she's
not
not maybe
official,
a
right,
registered
yes.
service
Mhm,
dog,
mhm.
but she is a dog of service. Back to the healing power of animals, and then I wanna do a deep dive into your book and some of the stories in your book. Have you found that the animals can help people heal from illness and disease? I'm thinking of especially the horse healers. I know of people that have, I don't know, what do you call them? Have, farms where somebody with cancer, say, will go and there'll be an equine healing center. And it's amazing. I've
Yes.
seen the videos where the horse will come. Let's say if somebody has lung cancer, the horse will come right up and will nuzzle the lungs or nuzzle the side of the chest where the
Yes,
cancer is. And
yes.
they'll stay there for long periods of time. And it apparently is really an effective modality as part of the healing equation. Do you have any thoughts on that? Is it just horses? Is it other kinds of animals? Do you know any
Well,
stories?
one of the stories in the book is a woman, actually, it ends up being she has a dog, Yoshi, and she said that instead of the dog sleeping at her feet, her dog changes would lie right down, small dog, lie on her chest. She's like, and then no, stand on her chest and look at her. And she's like, "What the heck? Why are you doing this?" Thinking. She ended up going in. I don't know if she had a checkup or what it was, but she went in and then she found out that she had breast cancer. So the dog was standing there trying to communicate, look, this is not normal. And then when the dog stopped doing that, after her treatment, she was clear. But the dog stopped doing that before she got the indication from her physician. And so she thought back, she said, Yoshi stopped sleeping here before I was told I was clear. So it's just amazing what they can do and what they know. And I do believe I didn't hear of this with animals actually, you know, healing. I haven't heard that with in terms of disease states, but I believe that that's possible. And I think it's more so because of the energy they have and transferring that energy to, whoever needs it. So that's my philosophy.
I've read that and I've heard several times the dogs especially can tell if somebody has cancer, and
Yes.
that there are some researchers that believe that they can smell it, that it has a funky smell that they're picking up, and
Uh-huh.
that's why they're but how does the horse know that somebody's got lung cancer? And there's the person's laying on the table, like
Mhm.
on a massage table, and they bring the horse in,
Mhm.
and the horse stands there, and then the horse goes right up to her chest
Mhm. Mhm.
where the woman has lung cancer. How do they know that?
Now I'm a vet. I I may know some things. That I don't know. I'd have to just kind of think about that one. I kind of feel like whether they're a horse, a pig, a goat, that they all have that ability. I don't know what it is about them. And I just think because we have more filters on our intuition than they do,
Good point.
uh, and that they, that's how they do it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. All right, tell us about your book. What led you to write your book? Tell us all about your book.
Wow. I'm thinking about the evolution of this book.
Tell us the name of it, first of
Okay.
all.
The Pet Effect. The subtitle is Healing and Learning Life Lessons from the Pets We Love. So these were stories of people who, went through some of the most difficult times in their lives. And their pets brought them through that time. And so there's a loving photo of them with their pet that accompanies the story. And the last line is the lesson they learned from their pets during that time. And so that's what I was saying when I asked, well, what lesson did you learn during your challenge? And they knew the answer. Unconditional love. Um, you know, that I need to release all of the craziness in my life and just be more at ease in my life. Whatever it is, they knew the answers.
How
So
did
that
you
was
find
neat.
these people?
So I asked people, I love going to the gym. So I know a number of people who go there. I've been going there for years. And I put it on my Facebook page and I was asking people and they said, I don't have a story for you, but I know someone who does. So a woman from the gym, her son is a war veteran and he had a story to tell. He ended up not, I couldn't get a hold of him at the end to confirm his story, but he had referred me to another war veteran who had PTSD and had two experiences in Afghanistan that were pretty horrific. So I would ask, and everywhere I went, I would ask, do you know anybody who has a story to share? And it's not just dog and cat centric. It's birds, could be a horse, could be a pig if you wanted to. So I was asking veterinarians I knew, my classmates, and they put it up in their newsletter, and I got some of their clients to give me stories, and so that's how I got the stories.
What do you think led you to do it in the first place?
Um, I kind of feel like this is on my life path, my part of my journey, um, to illuminate this pet effect. And then someone like you verified it with me, that was what I was put here to do in this lifetime, is to really show the positive impact that animals have on us.
Well, and I think you're illuminating something that we all know, but nobody really talks about it.
Hmm.
And when we can focus on, yeah, this is really true, and recognize it and be grateful for it,
Yes.
it, like you said, it opened up your heart
Yes.
and it allows you not only to love your pet perhaps even deeper and perhaps love humans, whether you know them or not,
Right.
in a
Hmm.
different way. Have you
That's
found
right.
that to be the case?
Um, some people, some people, for whatever reason, they'll say to me, "I love my pet more than people." A number of people have said that to me, but I do believe that the result is because their chakras open because they open their heart to their pets. That is, as a result, it will maybe not at that time that they feel that that's not happening, but I feel like it's allowing that to develop in the future for them.
Well, and loneliness is one of the biggest issues with people, especially elderly people,
Yes, yes.
that they're so used to having a big family around them, and perhaps most of their family has passed and their friends have passed.
Right,
One of
right.
my dearest friends, I called her my adopted grandmother. She and her husband took me under their wing when I moved to LA as an early 20 something and didn't know anybody and had never been there before. And when she passed, she told me, she said, I'm one of 7. All my siblings are gone. All their spouses are gone. All my friends are gone. There's really not much left for me. I've lived my life. I'm ready to go back to heaven. And I had never thought about that before. When she died, I was in my 40s, but she was right. I understood that. I understood exactly what she was talking about.
I get it now because my next door neighbors, I see it and I listen to what they say. They have this one couple come over and I thought about it. Oh my gosh, it's just them out of all their friends. Now she does have you know, uh a son and a daughter and grandchildren, but the friend circle, there's nobody left anymore.
Well, and the son and the daughter and the grandchildren, they're busy. They're living their
They're living
lives.
their
They're
lives.
doing
Mhm,
they're doing all of that,
mhm.
and my motto is happy, healthy, dead, and if somebody's lonely and they don't have the capacity to go out and be involved in other things. I mean, it's nice when the family visits once a week or once a month or whenever, but to have a companion in the form of a pet
Yes.
is really life-saving, I think, for a lot of
Mhm.
people.
Mhm, mhm. And I think about the people who are in that nursing home near me and,
Right.
people who don't get visits or they miss their dogs or I just see the shift in the energy and how Molly lights up the place when she goes in there. It's just I could be exhausted, like, sometimes I'd be exhausted when I visit my mother, but I I always wanted to bring that light and love to people because I said, "Come on, Daph, you're tired, but you're going to go anyway." And there's something I mean, I just love I really love uplifting people, so that's my high. That's my high. And seeing how animals play such a role, they can do that, you know? Um,
I think that they're a form of a spirit guide to a lot of people. Just listening to you during this conversation of all the ways that, to your point, that they've uplifted people, I think they're spirit guides. They're here teaching us. They're not humans. They're in a physical form. It's kind of like they got one foot in spirit world and one foot in the human world or in the world that we inhabit,
yes.
and they're guiding us. And certainly all of the ancient cultures all have animal spirit guides, the indigenous cultures and
Yes.
the ancient Egyptians, all of them. They all had pets on the drawings in the caves.
Yes, I was just thinking about that. I went to Egypt 1980, and I remember seeing the drawings and it just everything related to animals that was, inscribed in the pyramids. Just I have to go back there because I wasn't at the spiritual place I am at now, and I would like to experience it now that I'm at this point in my life.
Yeah. Let's talk about a couple of stories from your book. You mentioned the veteran who had a couple of tours in Afghanistan
Yes.
and he had something happen. Can you give us a synopsis of basically his story?
Sure, but he never got back to me to approve his story. But I do have another veteran warrior, and Megan and her dog Coda. So Megan was in Afghanistan, and within like a few days of her first tour there, she was walking in this huge field and she saw an aircraft carrier come slamming back to the ground and blow up in a ball of fire. A vehicle wasn't secured properly in there and caused the carrier to fall back to the ground.
An aircraft carrier I think of as a boat. You're talking about like a
Oh, I'm
transport
sorry.
plane?
A plane, yes, that carried,
Okay.
yes.
A
Mhm.
ship, not a
Yeah.
boat, a ship. Yeah. Okay. Like
Um,
a C5 or C5A or one of those big airplanes that
correct,
you can
correct.
load
Mhm.
tons of stuff on. Yeah.
And she saw that, and then a short time after that, she happened to be leaning against a building in Afghanistan, and a missile came flying through into that building and, you know, blew up right near her. And so she had, as a result, PTSD. And she couldn't talk to anybody about it. It didn't help her release or feel any healing as a result. So she decided when she got back home, she got this dog, Coda, this black lab, who didn't judge her. She could talk freely. She noticed that it was helping her progress along after being in Afghanistan. Um, and she just began to thrive a bit more after she had Coda. So Coda helped her through that experience. She went through a divorce. And she was like, "What is this? What is happening to me?" But yet Coda was always there, again, being non-judgmental, there to hear her talk to whatever thoughts she had. And she eventually got better, remarried, had 2 businesses, successful, life after the light after the darkness. So, she had a very great experience from Coda, and you could see in her picture with Coda the happiness that's on her face with Coda looking over her, leaning on her shoulder in her car. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Tell us
Mhm.
about Hershey.
Hershey and Ronnie. So Ronnie I know from the gym. She's an instructor in a gym, and so she has 2 sons, and at that time, she discovered that she had breast cancer. And so her thought as a single mom was, how am I going to, how am I going to deal with this? Am I still going to be a woman? Am I going to feel like a woman? Now, she got this dog for her son who has anxiety. And she thought, oh, he can help heal her son.
What kind of dog is Hershey?
Hershey looks like a lab mix. He looks like he's mixed with a few different things. But he's brown and white, thus Hershey. I guess Hershey and really, you know, Hershey and milk really was called. His presence in the house, as she said, just brought so much happiness to their family. And she discovered that he helped her during her time when she was dealing with, am I going to survive this breast cancer? And so she'd cry on Hershey. And so he was therapeutic for the entire family. And what she discovered that she liked is Hershey kind of brought them all together and brought them lots of laughter. And so being all together, walking or being out in nature or whatever it may be, really helped them all have a wonderful lifetime when they were all together. So
Are there stories in the book that are non-dog stories? Do you have cats or lizards or
I
peacocks or
have
anything else?
I have 2 birds. So CJ and Murphy. CJ I know from the gym also. She also lives in my complex here. CJ was in a toxic 13-year relationship. She had a bird before and her boyfriend made her get rid of the bird. And she thought to herself later, I should have kept the bird because this relationship isn't for me.
Kept the bird, got rid of the boyfriend.
Right, right. But she said that her bird Murphy made her realize the love, unconditional love she was receiving from him, she should be feeling from her partner. And she didn't feel that. And he opened her eyes to say, give her the strength to leave and stay with her. And now she's very happy. So the 13-year period, she didn't see it, but then after she got Murphy, she did. Um, Another gentleman had a horse, my Thunderbolt. So this was a gentleman who used to train race horses, but train them in a more gentle way. He didn't like the way they were treated. The industry was notorious for how they dealt with race horses, and he had a gentler approach. But yet, this horse that he went through a divorce. He loved his wife so much, and she wanted a divorce. And so then they still lived in the same house for a period of time until the divorce was finalized. And so he said that house was so cold in terms of the feelings and how they were interacting with each other. So he would go out, go get his horse from the stall, go ride in meadows, ride along the beach in California. And that allowed him to escape the current situation that he was going through with this loveless marriage. He still was very much in love with his wife. He didn't want the divorce, but he realized at the time, okay, she wants it. Us being in this house together in this way is not good. And his horse allowed him to escape that environment and escape his situation that he didn't want to be in the first place. Mhm.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard horror stories about the race horses and
Yes.
what
Yes.
goes on, and so many of them are euthanized if they're not gonna be able to be bred, and
I know.
I do know a couple of people that have rescued, and I know there are rescue
Yes.
groups for their race horses
Yes. Thank
that
goodness
are
for
out
them.
there.
I
Yeah,
say thank goodness for the people who do this. I mean, really, who do this work and find ways to rescue these animals and put them in much better environments, you know? Mhm.
right. Why do we incarnate?
I think, as you said, that I just saw a spider go across near my plant. I think we incarnate to learn the things that we need to learn to continue to evolve during our spiritual growth.
Mhm.
That's my belief. I didn't used to believe that, but I believe it.
What changed your belief?
I think exposure, being open to hearing different things. Um, I think m- before, you know, in a traditional Christian environment, I remember saying something to my mother uh, once about when my father had passed, and the drawstring on the blinds moved. There was no air, there was nothing in the room. The windows were closed. And she said to me, "You think Leroy did that?" I said, "Actually, I do." I was sitting in his chair, and I think he did that. And so my mother poo-pooed a lot of things, but I would still find, once I was exposed to different lectures and different people who were teaching different things, it was like I was a sponge. I couldn't get enough of that. And something said, once I started listening to my own inner self, I said, I think these things are true. And so that's kind of what did it. Listening to different things and wanting to listen to more and more, reading different books, like a lot of the Hay House books and things like that, really kind of accelerated these beliefs and my change in what I previously believed.
So what are you doing now? What's your next project since the book's been released?
My next project,
Are you still vetting? Are you still being a vet? Are you still helping out at
no, no, I am not. One of my friends has a practice. He just, "Dad, could you come work for me?" I said, "No, I think I'm done with practicing." I just feel like that doesn't excite me. There's parts that I like, but it doesn't excite me. And I feel like there's something else. Well, I kind of know. I remember when I quit mm, working at Wyatt, when I resigned, I remember thinking, somehow it just came out of nowhere. You're going to have host a television show. I didn't know what that looked like. Didn't know what it looked like, but now I would like to host something that's along the same lines as this book.
how pets affect our lives in a multitude of amazing ways?
Right. Whatever stories there are that people have and trying to help them release there's still people who feel like they're not supposed to feel that way about their pets, right? Growing up feeling that they were lesser beings, or growing up thinking you can't love a pet the way you do. And it's okay. It is okay. So, yeah, that's part of the message in this book. And even if people don't have pets, I want them to be inspired to believe that they can find the light at the end of the tunnel, whatever they're going through. I want them to be inspired by these people who went through what they went through, and to believe that they can also.
Yeah. Well, you're a remarkable woman. You told me when we first met, you said, I'm a girl who went from the Bronx to the boardroom. I thought that was fabulous when you said that. And it's such a great metaphor for you and your life. I just am in awe of you and I love you to pieces. I think you're just remarkable. How can people learn more about you and your work and buy a copy of the book?
They can go to my website, which www.Daphne.com, and they can read about me. And then if there's a tab for the pet effect, and then they can click on, there's two buttons they can click on to purchase a copy.
Wonderful. So, if everybody listening and watching, if you have a pet, if you're a pet lover, if you know somebody who's a pet lover, you want to go get The Pet Effect by Dr. Daphne because it is really such an uplifting, fun read and has so many golden nuggets in it that people are absorbing and they're not even aware. that they're absorbing them. So kudos to you,
Yeah, it's
girl.
not scientific. They may think a veterinarian is going to be like, how many chromosomes, how many. No, it's just very simple, 1 to 2 page stories. And
It's
I
really
hope you
wonderful.
enjoy it.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Alrighty, everybody. Lots for you to think about. In the meantime, sending you much love from Sweet Home, Alabama. Mwah! And from New York, too, where Dr. Daff is. We'll see you next time. To enhance your spiritual journey, click on one of the videos below and remember to subscribe, leave a comment, and share with your family and friends.